Alrighty.
Hello, everybody. This is Debbie Powell. I'm the Master Gardener Coordinator for both Calaveras and Tuolumne counties. We are at our Master Gardener information session. We have a wonderful presentation that Maggie Murphy, who is a Calaveras Master Gardener, is going to be presenting. And the topic is seed, plants, law, and saving seed. Maggie, I have to tell you, it is an intriguing title.
Well, Debbie, as you know from our discussions, it's kind of gone back and forth with people interested about saving seed, and then what do you have to know before you save seed? So this particular presentation at the end, it won't get into a great detail about saving seed itself, the physical aspects. That will be coming sort of next, you might say, the next thing to tackle.
Okay.
But what we want folks to know about this presentation is once you start talking about law, of course, you can get into all kinds of detail. Or when you start talking about the seed industry, you can be talking about the global agricultural seed industry. But master gardeners are focused on home gardens. So this presentation is not going to get into depth on anything that wouldn't relate back to a home garden.
Okay.
I'll be focusing only on those points. And now with that, some people may not know, genetically modified seed is not available to home gardeners. So in all the discussions we'll be having, I won't be talking about genetically modified seed at all, pretty much. And the other thing is, in the industry, there are some global players, and I'm not really going to get into some of the large global ones. We'll just be talking about the stuff that you can relate back to your own garden, your own seed saving efforts, and what you want to know about plants.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, yep. Now, I did want to warn folks, I told Debbie I didn't want people to give up and walk away. The first few slides, because we're talking about seed law, are a little bit text heavy. After that, it gets a little easier to follow and more visually interesting. So I do promise if you bear with me for the first few, you folks will be okay. Now we can go to slide 2, yeah.
Okay.
And I think most of you know, some of you may not, but when you have your Master Gardener hat on, we don't endorse any specific company. Of course, I want to be able to show you pictures and slides and have quotes, so I will quote from specific companies, but I am not endorsing them. And now to slide 3. And there are laws that relate to plants and seeds. So slide 4. Why have laws? Well, people who develop new varieties put a lot of time, effort, and money into that, and the laws help protect the people who develop new varieties. Also, most of you have seen all the warnings about seeds being mailed from China. Is it possible it's an invasive species? Blah, 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 blah. Importing and exporting of seed is governed by laws, and that does help protect the ecosystem of the various countries. It helps prevent the spread of invasive species, and I think everybody on the phone knows what invasive species are. We are talking not just bugs and fish and rodents, but also diseases and things that can affect the growth of plants and animals. And then finally, the seed-related laws that you'll be happiest to see protect the farmer and the consumer. Is what is in your seed packet what you paid to get, kind of the very bottom line. There are a lot of... Whoops, was there a question? Nope, okay. The California Department of Food and Agriculture, for those of us in California, that is our main group as far as stakeholders in the industry. I'll be covering quite a few more in very light detail, or not detail at all, but just touching on them. but they're actually the people who do the seed law enforcement. If people want to bring plants into California, they handle the certification, and they do the inspections and diagnostics of the companies that are tasked with ensuring that good seed makes it out to the consumer. Okay, slide 5. The promoting new varieties is where some of the laws would affect what you do as a propagator, a plant propagator for the master gardeners. UC will want to help protect the egg industry. We do want to protect the hybridizers, the people who are taking years to develop new varieties. Johnny's Seed, one of the websites I found about Sunshine Kobita squash, was that it took them 20 years to develop that particular hybrid squash. So a lot of the legal protections are to make sure that these companies can get their money back for their research and effort. There are 3 types in the U.S. of intellectual property protection. We care most about the top 2. The plant variety protection, that's for the asexually propagated plants, things you take cuttings of if you split the tubers, and the Plant Patent Act. And actually, I've got the asexually on both of those, and I should check that. Sorry about that, folks. But these 2 acts, you will either see PVP or PPA on a seed packet or on a nursery plant label if it is something that you are not supposed to propagate. Both of those, and I've double-checked, somebody mentioned they had heard it was 8 years. Both of those are good for 20 years from filing. Now, throughout this presentation, I'm quoting so much that at the end, I do have a list of resources and say all of this is on the CDFA page, their web page. And if you wanted more detail, we have places you can look for it. The other thing to know about this is, in addition, some seed companies go ahead and trademark the particular variety name. Now, again, sometimes, I go to websites with other gardeners and stuff, and people are like, oh, gosh, I don't even want to deal with this. We don't care what you do in your home garden. That is completely your business. If you are a master gardener and you have your master gardener hat on, then please only propagate plants that it is legally okay to propagate. Those of you in Calaveras know, say our plant propagation area does undergo a nursery inspection. So it is something where we don't want to have protected plants all lined up there, ready to be sold. Like I said, we really want to protect the industry and ourselves and do what is right. It's an ethical thing. I mean, the patent holder can seek injunctions and damages and all kinds of stuff, but it really, when you're talking us and the level that we're dealing with, we're really talking about just doing business ethically. And in addition to Johnny's, another note I have here, Peacevine tomato that I enjoy, it's a cherry tomato. They took 10 years to develop the stable seed parents and to make that particular tomato available to the public. Now, Peacevine was the opposite of what you see for a lot of hybridizers. He's actually not protecting it, and the work was done to dehybridize the hybrid Sweet 100, and they took 10 years of crossing their seeds to get that to happen. Okay, now here we go. In case you forgot your Master Gardener Handbook information, plants and how they propagate. If it's seeds and sexual propagation, you have basically your mom plant and your dad plant and your child plant. And they can be vastly different offspring from the parent. And this is really important when you get into saving seed, that the pollen from one plant can cross with the pistil from another if you have your varieties planted close together. Asexual is where you're basically making a clone. You're ground layering, you're making cuttings, you're sectioning your bulbs. For a very long time, people didn't bother to legally protect seed. But that has changed, and this is where most people's concepts of that have not caught up. That there is some seed that you're not supposed to save, that it does fall under a protection. Okay, now, Debbie, we're on slide 7.
Okay.
Okay, so the federal level of government, we have border protections for plants. We have the Patent and Trademark Office, and the very high level of protections. Again, we care mostly about the PVP and the PPA. That would be the Plant Variety Protection and the Plant Protection Act. There's also a Federal Seed Act, and that the states, say California, can enforce the Federal Seed Act. And if California has additional laws, the California laws override the Federal Seed Act, but the Federal Seed Act does have a certain level of law as it relates to seed. And again, I'm glad you're bearing with me, and I know this isn't the most interesting part, but we're almost done with this part. And again, the PPA, the plant protection, you will see it on a label. If it's not on a label, then you don't have to worry about it. That the consumer is protected, so if you get a seed that's protected, it should be on the seed packet. And if you buy something in the nursery, it should be on the nursery label, that it might only say PPA and a number, and it might say PVPA or PVPO and a number. But if it has that designation, then you know it's protected. One way to do that, if you do like protected varieties, is to have some sort of a garden journal so you can keep track of what you shouldn't propagate. You can do it online or on paper. And perhaps another class in the future, we can all share our garden journals and show what we like to keep track of.
That's a great idea. I love garden journals. Great idea.
Yeah. I've seen some wonderful ones, and given my computer background, mine is mainly a gigantic Excel spreadsheet. Okay, now we're going on to slide 8, and you'll be happy to know this is the last of the text-heavy slides. Yay, you're making it. Okay, so I knew when I was putting it together, but I just couldn't get away from covering enough, I guess, to make it valuable for you folks. So the California seed law, and this will always supersede the federal seed law. And the other thing to be aware of is, like, how many states in the union are there? How many states have their own seed laws? So there are seed organizations that try to push for consistent seed laws across the states, but at this point in time, everybody can have their own seed laws, and California has theirs, and since California is where we're sitting, this is where we are. But if you thought about selling seed, you can imagine what a headache it is that every state can have their own seed laws. Now, why, again, have seed laws? They talk about what legally has to be on the label or the tag. They talk about the quality, germination tests, purity, that you're not getting noxious weeds, you're not getting inert matter and a bunch of dirt and rocks, and that the variety that you are told you're buying is what you're buying. That's all part of the seed law. And they do work with other organizations to certified seed conditioners, harvesters, and people performing services. I'm going to get into what those services are, so don't worry about that just yet. The main thing that is interesting is it does not regulate flower, ornamental trees, and shrubs and seeds of native plants. We're really talking agriculture, turf, and vegetables here. And most people roll herbs and things you eat into the vegetable category for the legal determination.
But just, hey Maggie, can I ask you, a lot of the herbs though, herbs are used for culinary purposes, but a lot of herbs are just, I would consider them ornamental. And is there a way to kind of figure out if that's affected by the seed law?
There is probably a way to dig. All I could find this morning, because I was doing some extra digging, I did find something from Purdue University that said, you know, in Purdue, Illinois, herbs are included in their description of vegetables.
Okay.
Most places list vegetables as things that are grown to be eaten as vegetables, but then Purdue said this also includes herbs. I did not find that yet in any California information.
Okay.
Okay, so that's, the good thing is, because we have so many states and there are so many laws, that most seed companies are going to adopt the most stringent laws. So if in Illinois you have to call an herb a vegetable and obey the law, their packets are going to be printed for Illinois for herb part. And their packets say, if in California your germination test that shows how good, you know, if 1 out of 10 seed or 10 out of 10 seed germinates, that your test is 15 months and it's out of date for retail. It should come off the shelves.
Okay.
So that then if we are the shortest germination test, I would expect that most people selling seed then would say, you know, if we adopt California this and Illinois that, we can sell across the U.S. kind of thing.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
And the labeling, it does protect you, and it protects the breeders because everybody can know if they have property rights. And it also protects the farmers and different people in the seed chain. Because although as consumers we might not create a huge fuss if one of our seed packets doesn't germinate, you can imagine if you've got the big farms and big machinery and you're out there and your seed isn't what it's supposed to be or it doesn't germinate, that suddenly legal matters get involved. So the seed law does get into detail on that. We're not covering it as far as what kind of damages you can get and blah, 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 blah. That's way too much detail for any of us.
I believe you.
I've scanned those things, and you could go cross-eyed and bleary-eyed.
I bet.
Now, at this point, do you want to unmute and see if there's any questions? Because this was
Okay.
the deepest and worst part.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've
Yeah,
got some stuff we didn't.
Okay, hold on, everybody. Let me get down to, let's see, where are we? Ask. Okay, so now, if you would, you'll have to unmute yourself, but you can if you've got any questions for Maggie about this.
Maggie, I have a question. This is
Okay.
Caleb with the I'm an old master gardener. The named varieties, can we propagate those but not use the name of, say, camellias and that kind of stuff?
We technically, okay, just because it's a named variety doesn't mean we can't propagate it. There's that bit about it being that it was a special hybrid and it was protected for 20 years.
Okay.
In addition to that, the company who hybridized it had to decide to protect it. So say, you know, pea seeds didn't protect peace vine tomato because they wanted to kind of give it to the world and they collect donations and things like that. Whereas some of the other things you may see years ago, because I was propagating a white profusion butterfly bush and I knew the name, so I was Googling what the patents were, and it turned out at that point in time none of the tall butterfly bushes were patented, but at that point in time the miniature ones were.
Oh, okay.
So say you could propagate the big ones but not the little ones. on the seed packet laws, they need to list the variety. And they're really, I've only seen seeds recently that come under the seed protection, because basically it's a type of hybrid that they then keep going long enough to get a stable seed. You know, you can plant this hybrid, and if you save the seed, you get the same plant. That's very different than most hybrids that you're thinking of that have a mom and a dad, and then the child is the hybrid that you really want, and it's really hard to grow that from seed.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, the varieties we can't do are actually pretty small, and most of the ones that are protected, like say if Cosmos Thanos is protected, that's the light yellow one. If you buy the packet of seeds, you can grow it and sell it.
Very good.
So for master gardeners, most of what we're thinking about really is in the propagation area.
Okay.
That if you buy a special plant and it's got the little PPA and a number on the label, then we shouldn't protect those, even if we just say, oh, I'm selling a butterfly bush. But
Okay.
we know it's the protected one. We still shouldn't put it up there. But thank you for the question, because it really helps clarify it for everybody. So thank you.
So our vegetables,
Any other questions?
yeah,
What's that? Go ahead.
are vegetables and herbs included in the law does not require, I wasn't clear on you talking about that, where they came in.
Yes, the seed laws. Okay, the plant protections, the PPA. That's where I should have been clear. So maybe we should go back to that side. Okay. Looking for which one am I looking for? If we go back to slide 8.
Okay, let me see if this is slide 8. Okay, oh, okay. Sorry about that. I'm
Okay.
on slide 7. Let me go to 8. There's 8.
Well, actually, we're going to toggle between 7 and 8. So
Okay.
California seed law, so this is only about seeds, doesn't regulate flower seed, ornamental trees and shrubs, and native plants. But then if we go back to slide 7, the plant variety protections, those you actually see way more of on hybridized flowering shrubs and flowering plants. So the seeds, for some reason, California decided we're not going to worry about flower seed, we're going to worry about agriculture and food industry. But for plant variety protections, those are on a lot of flowering plants. Pretty much if you get a flyer and it says this is a brand new release, you can probably find a plant variety protection, the little PPA or PVP, and a number on the label somewhere.
So you're saying on seeds, we can go a lot by the packet. Like here's a packet of herb seeds and it says public domain, GMO free and public domain. So.
Correct. And with the whole GMO free, yeah, I've been doing different, I've been a member of different garden websites for, since most of us are mature, we'll just say for 20 years. we won't go back further. And for a while, when the seed companies started putting non-GMO on their seed packets or catalogs, people got angry because they said, well, that's kind of false advertising because no seed company that sells to the public has GMO seed. So then some companies took it down because they didn't want to be accused of trying to make it look like the other guy was doing something wrong. And then you would see on these garden reviews, like Garden Watchdog, somebody would say, well, I'm not buying from them anymore because they took down that they don't offer GMO, non-GMO seed. So it becomes a big thing now. Almost every seed packet you see at least on their website, they will say it's non-GMO, but you can rest assured with everything, and I've been checking all this stuff out, GMO is still not offered to home gardeners. It's mostly soybeans and corn, and you're talking at, the $1 million farming levels that those folks can get the seed. But yes, the seed packets I have pictures of later in the presentation, and you can go by what is on your seed packet.
What about scented geraniums?
Each one, we would have to look at the name. If it's, you know, if it's been around for 25 years, then it's in the public domain.
Okay.
If it's something new, I don't know if the chocolate ones are new or not. But if it's something new within the last so many years, then you need to look up the name.
And where
And
do you look?
usually if you Google search on the name, you can go to the Government Patent and Trademark website and you can search on things there. It used to be an easier search. Now their websites tend to get locked up. But you can also Google it, because a lot of times you'll find the breeder's page, and whoever the breeder is will have the accurate information about if it's under patent or not. But most of the scented geraniums, gosh, I had a friend who was into those like 25 years ago. So the majority of them, the citrus ones and such, if it's not a special new name, even a lot of the variegated plants, if you think back to the first time you saw them, they've been around for quite a while. You know, dark plants probably were really in vogue in the Bay Area like 25, 30 years ago, maybe. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, Deb, we can mute folks and then unmute me.
Okay.
And then get to slide 9.
Okay. Oh, I think and let me find you. Let's see. Hold on. Sorry about this. There you are. Okay, Maggie, I'm asking you to unmute yourself.
Yeah, there we go.
There you are. Okay. And let
Okey-dokey.
me advance the slide, and I'm
There
on
you are.
9. Okay.
Yep. Okay, so I did mention we're not going to cover a lot, so not to get too confusing about the global seed industry, and many of you will have nightmares if you know that they have had so many mergers. It used to be the big 6, and now it's the big 4. And the big 4, when you talk agriculture and turf, are Bayer, Monsanto, Dow, DuPont, Corteva, and China Chem, Syngenta. China Chem had bought Syngenta. So those are the big ones. And many of the reports you find online when you're trying to find out who's the biggest and not, they'll combine seed with agricultural products like pesticides. And it can be hard to find sites that are talking only about seeds, only when they talk about those sites. So this is where everybody's panic over GMO comes in, on who the industry is. And the global seed industry is basically approaching $72 billion as far as that is. Now, I'm not going to talk more on that. Again, we're going to concentrate on home gardeners. But as far as having that awareness that there are laws and there are reasons for laws, you really are talking quite the industry, because, you know, pretty much every country that can grows some kind of food. So let's go to slide 10. Now, within California, this and the next slide are part of what I really wanted to let people know is there are suppliers who are the farmers and the seed producers. You know, this is saying first there's the Federal Seed Act, then the California Seed Law. Then you've got your suppliers who grow the seed, the farmer. You've got your labelers. And the deal is the labeler is the person whose name and address appears on the seed packet. So Burpee is a seed labeler. Baker Creek Seeds is a seed labeler. Pine Tree Seeds is a seed labeler. They're not the supplier. and the dealer would be the shop, or if the labeler also sells directly. I'm not really concerned as much with them as letting you folks understand the difference between the supplier and the labeler, because some of you may know I run the Victory Garden website Facebook group for us. And I have so many people saying, oh, this is my favorite seed company. And I'll think, but they charge $2 more per packet than everybody else. And it's the same seed coming from the same supplier, just in a different pretty picture package. And I haven't said that out loud yet. Now, when you get beyond that, there are records requirement, and the folks in our ag offices do handle those. And there are label requirements. And when you think of your seed labelers, which are the companies that are on the packet that you do business with, most of them talk about their test and trial gardens. And that's a completely different concept than growing the seed. You know, that's deciding what they're going to carry and how well it does in their environment and getting more information for you. Okay, that's the main points for this one. Now if we go to slide 11. This is a little bit confusing, but when you talk the billion-dollar industry, this is saying if you're in California, this is who the players are. And when you talk about the seed growers, there actually can be different companies that come in to harvest the seed from the farm, and yet a different company that conditions it. Now, if you've ever saved seed yourself, say I save Nigella or salvia seed, and you would know if you save seed and it isn't just the big seeds like sunflower or squash, that it can be very difficult to get all the chaff out, you know, all the little bits of stuff. And yet when you buy a seed packet, you don't have any of that. That's all the conditioners work. They have to make sure there's no weed seeds, that the seed is clean, and they also have to make sure it's an accurate sampling from a seed lot so that when the germination test is done by inspected laboratories, that it comes back that this germination is true for this lot of seed, that they've done a representative sampling. So this is where most people think, that second column, the first one, labelers, most people think that if they buy seed that says it's from, say, Baker Creek, that's also the grower, the harvester, and the conditioner, and it's not. It's very different companies. And you can actually have one grower supply 10 different labelers, so you can buy the seed that's the same from everybody else. Was that something, Debbie?
Well, I'm wondering, do they mention that on any of the seed packets, or is that just kind of inside information?
That is not mentioned on the seed packets. I found one site, and when we get into hybridizing later, I can say why, that was a very small seed company I'd never heard of before, like one little farm in Oregon. And he mentioned his seed comes from these 5 other farms in Oregon, and he was, you know, selling seed. The problem is, then do you get people who don't understand hybridization, and are they selling you good seed that they're raising in their backyard? Okay. So the labelers try to go out of their way to let you believe that they're accountable all the way through the line. Now, they do, of course, look at the germination test, and most of them, if you call them up or email and something didn't work, they'll send you your money back for the packet or whatever for the home gardener. But most don't readily share that information, although you'll be happy to know you asked this. It's almost like you're a plant. The copy of the presentation you have doesn't have one thing that I added this morning, and I was thinking if we don't take too long, we'll go there. Reimer Seeds has a country of origin map, and you can click on the map and see what seeds that country grows.
Ah, how interesting.
So, yeah, because for folks, and we'll get into it, we have it on the seed labels later and some other stuff. just because your seed labeler is in the U.S. and their address is in the U.S., it does not mean the seed comes from the U.S.
Okay.
That's a country of origin. Okay.
Okay.
So yeah, so this and the previous one are the big things for master gardeners to understand about the seed industry. Is legally the people you see on a packet that you think of as your seed company, they're considered a labeler in the eyes of the law. And the growers, harvesters, and conditioners that can be big business are all completely different companies in most cases. Any seed company that grows all of their own seed is going to tell you right off. And more you'll see they test seed, or you have people like Johnny's seed that he might hybridize seed. Now, he still has somebody else grow it. I say a he. They're all bigger companies now. Somebody else grows it, but they're into hybridizing. Okay.
Okay.
Slide 12. Now, the terms you see, and this is what I've put down under terms you see is from the CDFA document. So this is their terms, and it is that the labeler is the person whose name and address is on the label. And if you have a packet of seeds, their name and an address must be on the label. So it's not quite the same as being on a website where you can't find a phone number. There's always an address. There's always somewhere to get in contact of it. And the conditioner is the person who cleans the seed, and in some cases they may test, in some cases they might send it to a lab. The farm is the agricultural production, which we also see them called the supplier or provider. And the certifying agencies, California checks which ones are okay, and they have to go through the different directors, and the director at UCCE experimental station you can see is also involved before they approve the qualifications of the seed certifying agency, and those are the people running the germination tests. So we've talked a little bit about the labelers. Now, another example I have is, I think I mentioned already, Xanthos Cosmo. So that's the light yellow Cosmo. It got a Floral Select Award, and if you go to the Floral Select webpage, you find out that the hybridizer is Van Hemet and Company. So that's the hybridizer. Now, it might be grown by one farm in Mexico where Cosmos originally came from, or in South America, but it is labeled and sold by Select Seeds, Harris Seed, Stoke Seed, Swallowtail Seed, Territorial Seed, Kitchen Garden Seed, Eden Brothers, Burpee, Park, and it's sold on each of their websites. Now, it's a flower, so the seed laws don't apply, but that is a specially hybridized flower. It's probably only grown in a few places, and yet it is carried by a dozen different companies. So if it's something you wanted to buy, if it's me, I'll go check the price of the seed packet, and if it's online, I check the shipping charges, or is it available in town, because they carry, Renee's Garden Seed at one of the places in town. And then you can decide, because across all those companies, that seed could be from the same lot. It might be and it might not be. We can't say for sure because they don't really share that. Now, Debbie had asked about the seed companies and exclusivity. You didn't really ask about, Debbie, but one of the things you'll see is Burpee will say this seed is exclusive to us, or Renee's Garden Seed might put on a packet that this is exclusive to us. With Renee's Garden Seed, and this isn't a ding to them, they have fine seed and I use them. They say exclusive when they put 3 different varieties in a pack, so their combination of putting those 3 into one package is exclusive to them. What I did notice in Burpee on one of their listings, which unfortunately at the time I didn't note it down, is they said it was exclusive to them, and then I Googled it and I found it on 2 other seed company websites. So they don't always keep up.
But that would be, I guess, just strictly a marketing term to say you could say that maybe?
My guess was Burpee, it was probably exclusive at one point. They don't update every single page.
Okay.
And that, you know, then it started being carried by others. And with Renee, it's definitely a marketing term because they put together varieties that other people have.
Right.
But then you can get 3 in a packet or 4 in a packet, and that offering is expensive. So you do get into semantics because the seed companies want to differentiate themselves from, and when I say seed, this is seed companies, in my mind and probably everybody listening, you think they're the seed companies, they're the seed labelers. And how do they differentiate themselves from the next guy?
Right.
Okay. So those are the terms, and again, the conditioners, I'm like, boy, I should know how they do their job, because if you've ever collected seeds, you know, I mentioned I'll take all the Nigella heads, which are the big poofy brown ones, and put them in a big brown bag, and then once I'm ready to collect them, I'll step on the bag to crush them, and then you have to shake it, and you've got all these little brown bits, and you've got your seed at the bottom mostly, and you can get to the point where you're trying to blow across the top to get the little bits of chaff off, but the seed are flying out with your breath. Because if you trade seed, people usually don't want, you know, bits of chaff in there.
Right,
I'm like,
right.
wow, because everything you buy, how do they condition it like that?
That's a good question.
Some things are easier.
Right.
Yeah, tomatoes, if you leave them overnight, the good seed will sink to the bottom, but it's not the case with every seed. Some of them can float. So we can go on to slide 13.
Okay.
And now this is the California Department of Food and Agriculture website, and it's back in the resources. They have a trifold, so if you are curious about this, you can download it, and it's an easy reference. And I've printed all the pictures here, but we're not going to read every word about it. Just going to highlight some of the strong points. You've already seen the diagram. And when it talks about the Federal Seed Act, the words in there are that California has the cooperative and government with the federal seed so that they can inspect for the federal rules compliance. Now, agriculture seed, we mentioned vegetable seed might include herbs depending on the state. Agriculture seed is grass, forage, cereal, oil, fiber, and often lawn. It might say agriculture and turf, or it might just say agriculture. They're including that with it. And the labeling requirements, again, we'll get into it. We'll always say ppaf or pp pound on the label.
Okay.
And within that, the California laws, and this is California, it does protect the consumer. Because I do have a seed, and I looked it up, and it looked like it was seed protected, Presto Coreopsis, which is like this little 8-inch tall, very compact, very dwarf variety. And because I'm surrounded by trees and forest here, I really am working to get the plants I grow other than vegetables to be all dwarfs, basically, so I don't have a lot of fuel for fires, because you've got a big old plant, you've got a big old pile of fuel.
Right.
And that one, some of the sites listed as having seed protection, because although it's a hybrid, it stays to 8 inches. If you don't grow it near other Coreopsis, it will come true from seed. But my packet from Park Seed, and I found it, it had no markings on it. And in California, you as a consumer have to know when you buy something how you can use it. So it must be on the seed packet. And it wasn't. So if I want to collect seed, I don't have to worry because it's not on the Park Seed packet. So I can go ahead and collect that seed and propagate that plant.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a winner right there.
It is, and the labeling, you know, the CDFA prefers that they actually spell it out and say unauthorized propagation prohibited, or unauthorized seed multiplication prohibited, or U.S. protected variety. The CDFA really asks them to go the extra mile. Now, if you go to the FloroSelect website, now FloroSelect is basically a flower and plant award that's out of the European Union. they have a gentleman's agreement among members not to propagate each other's plants. So they can get novelty protection that they pay for as part of their membership, and that is all within them. So if you go there and it says it's protected, it doesn't mean it's federally protected. It means that that group decided to have their own protection.
So Maggie, they have their own group, and within themselves, they've decided that they're not going to propagate each other's plants. So I'm assuming that all those plants are protected by a patent. Or do you think?
I would think if they went to the bother to pay FluoroSelect, that they probably went to the bother to get the hybridization protection.
Okay.
That would be my guess.
Okay.
But and because the European Union, because at first I was like, why doesn't it just say PPAF or whatever? But again, if you're a hybridizer, you actually have to do it in every country. So these German hybridizers have to, well, that's true and not true. Some countries have cooperative agreements. So they have to know, and I don't know which countries have the cooperative agreements, but they have to know where to file.
Okay.
To have that PPAF or PPA marking. My guess from what I've seen is most of them do file in the U.S. and they hope the U.S. has a cooperative agreement. Even if they're a German hybridizer, they still seem to have U.S. Markings because those PP things are our markings. But yeah, if you go to FluoroSelect and it's protected, because that's where I saw that Presto was protected, and then I went over to Parks and I'm like, well, Park doesn't say anything, and there's nothing on my packet. I can turn it upside down and all of that. So that's where that is. Now let's go to slide 14. And this is where, so most of you are master gardeners and you have a wonderful 3-inch hefty Master Gardener handbook. Well, it was written for seeds by somebody in the agriculture area, and he wrote the label. He actually put into the book the label requirements for seed, but he forgot to mention that the label requirements for seed are different if you're selling it in a half pound or more or less than half a pound lots. So most of us are buying less than half a pound lots. And if it's half a pound or more, there is more stringent labeling. And this particular page, the record keeping, that's all about big ag and them having to be able to trace back lots and know what's going on. That's not really as much our concern as it is the part that says label requirements. And if you buy your seed from a bin, what's in the little blue box, that should be on the bin. So sometimes people can go to an area and they get a big old bin of seeds. You should still have your germination date. See that as kind of the third line up there, and the date tested. And that date tested should be 15 months before it's being sold. And then if you buy your packet and it's more than half, you'll see it has a tested date, but it doesn't list the germination percent. And I thought the germination percent was required, but I had to reread it. They don't have to put the germination percent if it's within the California standard. If it's below standard, they have to put the percent and say below standard, and the California was smart enough to say, you know, no smaller than this level type, because you can be sure it'd be in 2 or 4 point tight or something if they could. And what is the germination percent for California for a seed? Well, guess what? It's different for every different seed and variety. And I get that because some things germinate readily and easily. You know, you can put 3 squash in. That's why we have grade school kids do it, and you'll get 3 squash plants popping right up. And some seed is very difficult to germinate, and you can plant a whole tray and get nothing and put them outside and bring them inside and do all kinds of stuff. So there isn't an easy way, unless you're going to really become a nerd and go through the website process. There probably is a manual somewhere that lists what the germination percent is for what it's standard and below standard. I do have some packets, and I didn't take a photo of the one, but I found that I did have a packet of seed, because some of them do list germination percent on there, even though they don't have to, and it was listed at 70%. So for me, that isn't really great, but I guess within that seed, it was okay. So that is the labeling, if more than half a pound. Now, if we go to the next slide.
Okay.
Less than half a pound, it only has to say packed for the year and the season. And that's what most of you are used to seeing. Packed for 2020, packed for 2019, packed for 2021. They don't have to put the germination test and date on the label. They do have to have it in their records for their lots and stuff, but they don't have to for us. And now the variety, they do have to say, you know, if it's an onion, they are supposed to correctly list the variety. So if you are going for a specific variety, maybe you want big boy tomato, it should be big boy tomato. And this is one, again, that some of the seed companies, it feels like some of them try to push it, because you'll see things and you think, isn't that the same as I saw over there? But it has a different name, and is it really the same thing? The seed disputes, that is really not something that home gardeners can get into on this, on the level they're talking here. The thing for home gardeners to be aware of, once you understand that there are labelers and providers, say I just last month had somebody I trade seed with complaining that she was so upset with GeoSeeds because she bought these two different plants. She had a begonia that was supposed to be yellow with a red edge, and it came out all orange, and she had a status that was the wrong color. And I really had to encourage her to email the company, because the company needs to know, because they purchased that with a certain label saying this is what it was. And all the consumers of that packet from them would be upset. And really, the company needs to go down their supply line to find out where the problem was. So if you do get something that's not what it says, you're actually helping the company out if you let them know. You're not being a pest. They really do want to know if it's not what it says it is.
Right. I'm sure they would.
For it to be, not just you. They paid for it to be what it says it is as well. And now if we go to the next slide here, 16, the yikes on this is that if you want to complain, the complaint process, you can file your written complaint with a fee of $250.
Wow.
So you can see that, the seed law, they're not, they will protect you and I, but they don't really want to hear from you and I about something we picked up at the local store. They're really, at the level of this, they're talking about the industry. And then the other thing, this is their back page, is these areas like Fresno District, on the Fresno Ag page, the person who would have, say, Scott Onito's comparable job might also have the area of inspecting the people doing the germination tests and such, because these are the areas that seed is grown. The areas that you see that CDFA says here are the people to talk to. That's where the seed is grown. Okay, now since I'm covering laws, although this isn't seed specific, we're going to slide 17. Some of you know this, but some of you aren't, and I'm always a little surprised that I've had let people mail them cuttings, and you say that's against the law to have somebody from out of state mail you a cutting. And I say, huh? And you say, well, have you ever been stopped by agriculture inspection? Did you ever go skiing and they took the fruit from you when you were driving home? It's like, well, yeah, I know they collect fruits and vegetables at the border. And you think, why do people think it's okay to mail it across the border if you can't drive it across the border? So prevention is the absolute best way to keep invasive species out. And California has laws, as do many other states. It isn't just California in this regard, that has agricultural inspections and agricultural laws of what you can bring in and out of the state. And for people to mail plants to us, and there are many companies that legally do this, they have to apply for and get California phytos certificates. It's phytosanitary certificates that their plants are okay and things can be periodically inspected. So if any of you ever have ordered plants online, although it's always much bigger and much less expensive if you get it locally, but if you go that route, or if you even sometimes shop them in the winter just to see what's out there, some of them will say cannot ship to California, Arizona, Washington. They give you a little list of places they just can't be bothered to do the extra paperwork to mail into. And this is important for home gardeners as well as the businesses, because many places outside California have pests and diseases that we don't have. I mean, when I was digging through some information a few years back, I found something that when they traced it down, they really think that the citrus disease that we're all seeing now was brought into California by somebody getting cuttings of a plant that had the citrus disease. It was found, basically a home gardener brought the citrus disease into California, and they also think it was brought into Florida, again, by illegally imported plant material. And I'm going to cover these next few a little bit more because as a vegetable gardener, I can't even conceive of not being able to grow zucchini or tomatoes in the summer. And yet that is true for some people. And the whole not taking plants in unless they are clean from a source that's willing to be tested is what keeps us being able to grow our tomatoes and vegetables without more hassle than we already have with the grocery rolls and whatever else. So that pretty much you should never buy from eBay, Amazon, and those other places. You really should encourage people not to get from them. If it's a larger online nursery, they generally have already gotten permission to mail. In the resources, there are links where you can check, like even to sell the vegetable seed in California, companies are supposed to register. So I had checked because it was like, oh, GeoSeed isn't on there, but GeoSeed only sells flowers. And pretty much everybody else I get vegetable seed from was listed in the California listing. They've paid their $40 so they can sell seed into California. So let's go. We're going to cover a few of these bugs because I really do want to scare people about how bad it is out there and how much worse it could get. And part of this is because, as I mentioned, I have for years, I mean years and years and years, back from, for those of you who are as old as me and remember CompuServe, I've been in different garden online groups and people send each other seed. And at the time, or years ago, I did call CDFA after I saw that we couldn't mail plants and cuttings, and they said seed is okay. Now, technically, there could be a disease carried on seed. If you do trade seeds, you can actually sterilize it. You can put in a light bleach and water solution. But they're not really worried about people sending seed back and forth. Unfortunately, people send citrus cuttings back and forth and all kinds of stuff. And across the internet and across Facebook, there are people who are mailing cuttings back and forth, and they really shouldn't, because we could have so many more problems. So if we go to page 18.
Oh, I was just there. Let me go back.
Yep, that's okay.
Okay.
There you are. So how bad can it be? Japanese beetles feed on like 300 species of plants and flowers. There are people whose roses are always eaten and whose this and that and the next. And when you go to CADFA, it turns out, you know, at the Sacramento airport, they got, you know, 2 bugs, and they found 1 adult male over in South Lake Tahoe. And it says, even on there, why are people so worried about 1 bug? And it's because if it really were to take root, it's already cost more than $460 million in damage in the East, that it really would prevent our nurseries from being able to sell as easily. It's federally, the bug has a federal attention on the kinds of transport you can have, and it truly ruins so many crops. And it periodically shows up in an airport. And I actually, you know, was putting this together, and I learned, I did not realize the CDFA did that much at the airport. I'm like, wow. So they are really doing their job. And then you've got squash vine borers. Now, vine borers are not the same as squash bugs. And the squash vine borers, there are people I know who are excellent gardeners, and they cannot get any summer squash at all. And it will be that, you know, they clean the soil, they clean the bed, you have to make sure your plants are clean, you have to put your cover crops on and make sure it's all the way around. There isn't any space at all, not cover crop, I'm sorry, but your row covers to keep the bugs out. And people say for some reason they still get in. And for all the effort, you know, we already put in a lot of effort, but you just basically lose your plants, that they eat right through, and they are something that is predominant in a lot of the U.S. As people start shipping things back and forth, the pests are not always on the same plant that you think of them as being, if that makes sense. Say the tomato yellowing, so we can go to the next slide, 19.
Okay.
This one can be found on all different plants. It will kill fields of tomato crops, but it can be carried in the tobacco species or peppers, and a lot of weeds will support that disease. So even though you think of it as, once you learn about it, as wiping out fields of tomato plants, it's a virus, and there can be all different kinds of host plants that you don't immediately think about. And it is devastating. People in Texas, and I'm talking not the home gardeners, but they've lost entire fields of tomato plants. And this one is spread by whiteflies, and it's a virus. And it's an especially nasty one. It has been found, you know, in 2007 in Southern California. And again, the web page I'm showing is the UC page, and it says it was arrested in Southern California. And I haven't found anything that says it is still taken root, although as master gardeners, you know, it is, we do have brochures and flyers on it. At this point, it isn't an issue for us, but it's something to be aware of, that it is in the U.S. and it could make its way here if people aren't careful. Because what to do is avoid bringing in transplants that have the problem, and don't move plants that support these white flies. And as soon as people start moving plants across the borders, we get more invasive species. So this is sort of one of my passions. It's like, we can prevent this. We really can prevent this.
I know, Maggie, I don't want to scare folks, but the viability of some of these invasive species, say for instance weeds, it's incredible how long they can live. I think we all know about yellow star thistle, that they can live in the soil 8 to 10 years. But I know that some other seeds can live, oh gosh, a lot longer.
Oh yeah, they germinated seed for the tree from Jerusalem at the time of, you know, for people who are religious, at the time that Jesus, zero BC, time zero of BC AD or whatever, that some seeds just do last a very, very long time, and others don't. In vegetable terms, it's mostly the onion family that's going to fall apart in a year. But other than that, most vegetable seeds will last much longer. Okay, so slide 20. And this is where California has natural barriers. We have cold mountains on the north, we have the desert in the south, we have the ocean on the west, and mountains on the east. And this protects us from so many of the disease and bug invasive species. And the way they come into California is from us, from people, from humans. And the way to avoid that is for us all to be careful and to also spread the word. If you see somebody saying they're getting something from Amazon or picking up cuttings or whatever, it's like, well, gee, you could put all the farmers here out of business. Why not buy something locally? So this is a really important piece of the puzzle to keep in mind, that we are naturally protected. It does help us, but at the same time, people with our like climates do have many more pests. Okay, now we're going to slide 21. This is a different aspect. I had the slide 21 and 22 are just for a high level of information that California does have vegetable seed crops. This is an old chart. You see it ended at 2007, and I took out the middle years. I left the early ones because if you look on the right, about 1, 2, 3, 4th down, you see Santa Clara used to be right up there. As far as vegetable seed producer, they're not anymore. They weren't by 2007. But the major areas where we have seed being produced, you do have San Joaquin in there, Sutter counties. So this is just a high-level area of high-level awareness that we do have seed businesses happening. The seed crop businesses do happen in California. And slide 22, you see the red line, Tuolumne, back in 2007, did have a flower seed farm. And Debbie gave me some names, and I called around, and people believe it was probably, okay, nobody went through and found the exact paperwork, probably Jamestown, but this Christie lady had Golden Brodea Flower Farm, and she sold at the farmers markets, and she might have been the county's first certified organic grower, and she also dabbled in flower seeds. So we believe that was a farm in Jamestown that unfortunately did get burned out in one of the wildland fires, and she went off and moved and did something else. Yeah, so, and then the chart on the right is just to say, even though it was back in 2008, those numbers that they're talking about, the California seed companies, those are in millions. So we are talking a large business here. And again, the charts on the right would include agriculture and turf. Okay, now here we go. Slide 23.
Okay.
This will answer some of the earlier questions. Labeling. Now the law says you will put the correct variety on there. Well, I happen to like Tromboncino squash. But if you look at the labels, well, Renee's calls it Trombetta di Albenga. And if you Google Trombetta, it actually means trumpet, not trombone. So she's kind of made up her own name there on her label. And when you look at the Rare Seeds, which is Baker Creek Seeds website, you'll see they say Zucchino rapicante. Well, that just means rampant zucchini. And they left off trombone or tromboncino. And you'll see Tromboncino on Territorial and Fegco, and then you'll see Zucchetta instead of Zucchino on Pine Tree over there on the lower right. So the consumer is supposed to be able to compare products and know what they're getting, but this is one example where you can see that the seed companies try to stretch it to make it look like they're carrying something different. These are all the same seeds. So even though Baker Creek and Renee's has different stuff I've bought from different people over the years, and this is the same Tromboncino squash.
Now,
So this is
Maggie,
part, yeah.
I don't see on, would it be on this label where they would say if it's patented? It doesn't, I don't see anything.
This is an heirloom. So your
Okay.
heirlooms will never be patented. And you can see Renee's put heirloom right in the title because they like to do that. So the stuff that's come down through the years has. I don't have any seed packets that have a label on it. I do have some when we get to the next couple of slides where they stick a little label on it, and I would think, okay, so let's go to the next packet, the next slide. So we're on 24.
Right.
So with Park Seed, it's really hard to see on that gold, but it does have country of origin USA, and that's what the arrow is pointing to. And they put the dates on there with stickers, so they probably just, you know, print a lot their packets for so many years worth or such. And this particular set of slides was because I wanted to show that people have country of origin in some areas. And the reason you'll see that is that to import to Canada, you have to have the country of origin listed. So it looks as though Park Seed and Stokes use the same envelope, whether or not they're selling in the US or Canada. And therefore, they just go ahead and put country of origin right on the seed packet. And you'll also see for the verbena, it was also the country of origin is the US. Now, if it was a protected variety, I would think, say, even looking at the middle Stokes one, you see verbena, imagination, and there's a number. They do put, most of them have a lot number somewhere on there so they can be traced back, or if it's not a lot number, they have a little bit of a barcode on there. But I would think if it was protected, they'd put it right up there with the name, because they have to run that, you know, that variety would always be protected. And my guess is they don't bother as much with the home gardeners. That for the protected seed, they're probably most interested in folks who aren't home gardeners. But it turns out a lot of things, even though they're hybrids, they can be open pollinated, because I actually have quite a few that on Flora Select say they're open pollinated and that they're protected. So that's this set of labels and the country of origin. And you can see on one, the germination test is 85%, so it isn't 100%. And the interesting thing about that is you'll run into people who want to swap seeds and send you 5 of something. Well, what if you get 5 duds?
That's a good question. That's a good point.
Like, I won't. And even when I start seeds, say I do a lot of tomatoes for the plant sales. You know, that's why a lot of people put 2 seeds in every little corner or something, is that the seed packet can be sold. It doesn't have to be 100%. Like I said, somewhere I had a packet that was 170, and that's perfectly legal to sell. Now, if we go to 26.
Hey, could I ask you one question, Maggie? I'm going to go back.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just go back real quick. When it says, like here, it says heirloom climbing summer squash for Renee's garden. When they use the word heirloom, can you assume that it's so many years? I mean, would it be automatically, you would assume that it's a plant that was developed, you know, longer than 20 years, or how does that work?
Depending on the site, I don't think there's a solid guideline. Now, if you go to Seed Savers Exchange, they would have that they believe this or that. I thought I read somewhere years ago it was closer to 50 years or before to call it heirloom.
Okay.
It does not have to be from the beginning of time.
Okay. That's good to know.
You know, it doesn't have to be the first. Well, it can be. Now a lot of the things we consider heirloom, you know, it is possible, or it could have been 100 years ago. I should probably Google this as we're talking. They may have been a hybrid at some point in time, or a cross, but most of us think of heirlooms as something that was always like original, but at the same time, from Darwin, at some point there were no plants, and then there were, plants, and then there were food plants, and then they evolved. So at what point in the evolution is, a squash machata different than a squash people, and at what point do they spin off, and at what point is a specific variety of, say, a squash pepo, which would include the pumpkins, at what point is that, a pumpkin as opposed to a big, ugly, watery looking thing? I haven't looked that up, but I bet I can.
Okay.
As far as if there's a level, but pretty much if it says heirloom, it's definitely old enough not to be protected by anybody.
Okay. Good to know.
It's like, it's been around. Well, I'm sure the rose people have a certain level they're talking about, and like I said, my gut feel says it's not the exact same across everything, but I could be wrong there.
Okay. And then I put the PowerPoint on slide 25.
Back to 25. Yeah.
Right.
So FedCo seeds came out through starting to work only in agriculture, and then they put up a website and they sell to the public. Because they work in agriculture, they don't have to, but they're in the habit of putting their germination test right on the packet. So you'll see there, 817 and 80% on the one in the center bottom for peace vine, cherry tomato, organic. And then you'll see 617 and 89% for the long pie pumpkin. So they do put it there, and you will occasionally see it, and that's what the date and the percent means. It's the date of the test and the percentage of germination they got for that particular lot of seed packaged in that envelope. And they don't have to do it, but you will find it on some. And now Park Seed, this was alfalfa for sprouting, one of my older packets, obviously, and they gave me the full agriculture packet there. No weeds, no other crops, no inert matter, which there are acceptable levels of that. What the inert matter there is 1%. Noxious weed seeds, none. They have to keep track of the lot numbers and the germination percent and the date of the test. So that's the kind of thing you would see on agriculture seed. And although the test was in October 2017, you can see that in my little square there. If you look at the packet on the far right, it is packed for 2018.
Okay.
So October is sort of the latest they could do that if it could be sold through December, and it's supposed to be within 15 months for retail. Okay, so now we're going to move into a different topic. Should we open it up to see if people have questions? Because that was a lot to throw at you. And
that was.
People might have had something come up.
Okay, and let me see.
So I have to unmute everybody.
Ask to unmute. Okay. I've asked everybody to unmute, so if you've got a question, now's a good time.
Maggie, this is Kathy again. So if we collect seeds, like I have hybrid like red seed poppies, and I collect those seeds, it's okay to sell those or ask for donations for those at a plant sale?
I want to say yes. I don't know which particular red poppy you have. If when you bought the seed, there was nothing about seed protection on the label, yeah. If you know the variety name, you can Google it, and find out. Most of the California poppies, some of those come in red and yellow and white. Most of those are not protected. I don't think I've ever seen one that is. And then the bread seed poppy, and I should let Debbie talk about this one because we've discussed this before. I know Renee sells them and everybody sells them. It is legal to sell poppy seeds because you can cook and eat with it, but you might not know in California it's not legal to grow bread seed poppies because they're opium poppies. Debbie, you want to add your little bit there?
Well, I mean, we had a long time ago a master gardener that checked a variety name, and it wasn't that particular one. I think it was called Black Swan, and that was seeds that was bought over the internet, and that again was something that you're not allowed to grow because it's actually an opium poppy. So
I meant the
poppies.
sheriffs, and you said at one point you had a master gardener plant sale, and the sheriff let you know something.
It actually was long time ago. We had a master gardener that used to work for the sheriff's department. It was in Stockton, and there was a sweet lady in downtown Stockton that had a beautiful front yard. And it wasn't him, but it was somebody else that had to go up to the lady and tell her that she wasn't allowed to grow those poppies because they were an opium type of poppy, and that her beautiful poppies actually had to be taken out.
But you can buy the seeds.
You can buy the seeds, right?
Yes, you can buy the seeds, and all the seed companies offer beautiful double varieties of opium poppies. Sometimes they'll call it breadbox poppy. It's Poppy somniferum. And in California, it's not legal to have those in gardens. So I thought one time, Debbie, that you had to take it out of a plant sale. Somebody was bringing them to the plant sale.
It was another county. It was another master gardener plant sale county, and they listed it as far as some of the plants they had available to sell. And so it was I believe it was the Black Swan variety. And that was removed from their plant sale.
What about something like a Shirley poppy? Because I'm not exactly.
I didn't hear that.
What if it's like a Shirley poppy?
Shirley poppies are fine. The Flanders field poppies are fine. There's that perennial poppy that's gorgeous and a little bit hard to grow. That's fine. It's only the somniferums. They get really tall and they have the really big seed heads. So florists like the seed heads. You can sometimes find those. I guess they shake the seeds out or whatever. But they're the big ones with the big heads. And I know a lot of gardeners who grow them, and I know a lot of people who are like, "Oh, I want some of those seeds." As master gardeners, we can't sell them. And as I said, since the original question was, can I sell the seed? If it's not a protected variety, you can. And because we can buy poppy seed to make bagels and breads and whatever, you can sell the seed.
Okay.
So that was a fun little diversion. See, we knew people would learn things they didn't know about today.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about seeds from plants that are still, new, like Monrovia plants, or that still have a patent pending on them?
The patents are different the patents are different if it's from seed or for asexual production. That's why we went back to that. Some things are an exact clone. So you cannot take cuttings of something that has a PP number on the label. Most of those hybrids are not going to come true from seed, and the seed isn't protected. Now, I know some folks on one of the garden websites, there's one lady that likes to take two different hybrid hibiscus, the ones with the big flowers, and now you can get the small shrubby ones that come with dark leaves. And she'll hybridize them herself. She'll take one hybrid and another hybrid and cross them and share the seeds. And it's really fun over there because you can get in and everybody puts up their pictures and you can have so many different offspring from one cross. So the seeds typically have not been protected. They're only protected on a variety that is going to come true from seed. And usually that variety is sold as seed.
Right.
Okay. But at the same time, you could buy Xanthos Cosmos at a nursery. They should have some protection level listed on it. Most of the shrubs, I'm not aware of them protecting the seed. But it should be on the label. And if it's both, which I've never seen, but if it were both, they would both have to be on there, you know.
Oh, okay, it would have to be.
Label.
Yeah.
Yeah. As a consumer,
Okay,
you have to be informed. Yeah, if they can't, you know, they can't not inform you, and although not everything you have has a label, something in the trade probably has a label, and you can look at it. But yeah, you as a consumer, you must be informed.
Great, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Should we continue? Any other questions?
Yes.
All righty. So slide 27. Debbie's there. And you want to mute everybody and unmute me, Deb?
Okay. I think everybody's already, I've muted, everybody muted, and you're unmuted.
Okay, super, super. So now we're getting into hybrids. I mean, hybrids, an F1 is easy to consider. The dad plant and the mom plant are completely different, and the child plant is different. And the thing about an F1, because, you know, like I mentioned, I'm on that Victory Garden site, and some people collect seed from F1, and then they grow it, and they want to sell it to a friend or sell it down to the neighbors, and it is no longer that plant. Sun Gold tomato is an F1 plant, and what happens is when you have the genetics of the mom plant and the dad plant, that are two different plants, and then they collect the seed from the child's plant and sell it to you, that's the F1. If you take a child plant with a child plant, that's an F2. It's the familial 2 generation. And F1 will not come true from seed. So it's something where if your favorite plant is an F1 plant, you want to get fresh seed. Because for the compost and the digging and the water and the space in your garden, it really is a good idea to get what you want. Now, some hybrids have been bred over generations, and they can become true from seed. So if it's not an F1, you have hybrids, and I have a picture of the Indian Summer Rudbeckia there, but also Autumn Colors, Prairie Sun. They're all listed as open pollinated. Now, if I were to grow my open pollinated Indian Summer next to an Autumn Colors, they can pollinate each other. Just because they're open pollinated doesn't mean they'll come true. And I'm going to kind of hit that point quite a few times, because I see people say, oh, but it's open pollinated. It's like, yeah, but if you grow one of this and two of that, one of this next to each other, and they are the same plant, like Rudbeckia hirta, they can cross. And these were 3 examples of the Coreopsis presto I mentioned. It also is a hybrid, but it will come true from seed. The peace vine tomato was deliberately bred to come true from seed. And then the other thing, which is, I'm not going to go into great detail because it starts getting all scientific, is when you talk about hybrids, it is not a myth. There is hybrid vigor, and you'll find it in the scientific papers and on the UC website, that the first generation, when you have the 2 different plants, you get in that first generation an improved vigor and the yields and the maturity, the uniformity. You do get stronger traits, and actually there's hybrid vigor when they talk about breeding cows. That one I was like, huh? I didn't bother to read it, so I can't tell you more, but if you want to Google hybrid vigor, you'll find that some of the articles are also about plant breeds. And I've mentioned this to Debbie a few times. I know people get worried about how plants are bred, and one of the tomatoes I'm trying this year, an Indigo Rose, was bred at Oregon State, and they made a big point of saying it's bred by traditional methods. Meaning they have, say, one plant that's really strong and another one that tastes really good, and they keep crossing them so that they don't get the weak plant that tastes bad, but they get the good plant, strong plant that tastes good, and they have to do that for years to get a stable seed blend. and then they can offer it to the public. So there is the whole taking the stamen of one plant and mixing it up with the pistil of the other plant to get your hybrid variety. Now we're going to go to 28. At first I thought this was too complicated to share when I was kind of Googling things to cover in this presentation. And a lot of the websites have Punnett squares and Mendel genetics for 5th grade course level for all the folks trying to teach their kids at home. And I was like, okay, I guess I remember something about brown eyes and blue eyes from when I was young, but they get into more detail these days, I guess. So I'm not a geneticist. I don't expect you to become a geneticist. I just have a few major takeaways from this. And we're talking an F1 hybrid PC. So on the top left, you have the parent and it's stable. That means that the line will always give you that plant. It's been stabilized, and stabilizing a parent line can take another 10 years or something. So one parent is the round green and the other one is the wrinkled yellow. And what they want is a round yellow pea. And that parent of the round green with the wrinkled yellow does give you their desired yellow. But when they cross the desired yellow with the desired yellow, then suddenly the dominant genes and the recessive genes take over the cross, and what you have is basically they got 9 of what they wanted and 7 of what they didn't want. And some people think, oh, that's not bad, maybe I'll take my chances. But here we're talking 2 things, round or wrinkled and yellow or green. And when you get into your hybrid, you're talking about your disease resistance and your taste and the level of acidity and all kinds of combinations. When you put all of those together, you may not get anything close to your favorite plant. And at the same time, and probably a lot of your friends or myself, if we save seed, you think, oh, you grow it, it looks the same. That's like, oh, I got a little yellow cherry tomato, it must be sun-gold. No, it might not be as strong, it might not be as prolific, it might not be as sweet. It could be any number of things that are different, but you will end up with something different. If you have an F1 seed, there are no 2 ways about it. You will end up with something different. And my main takeaway from that is there still are places you can get the seeds you want for just a few dollars. And for the time and effort of your garden, why not just go get what you want? I do save seed, but I'm really careful that, I'll save seed of heirloom things, but I always also grow some hybrids because they are more disease resistant. And if anything happens with the soil or you bring in some compost that has something, I know I'll always get something coming back. Now, how do they make a hybrid like this? Well, with squash, it's easy. What they do is they plant one big row of the female parent, and of course those poor farm workers have to go down the row and trim off all the male flowers, and one big row of the male plant and another row of the female plant and another row of the male plant, and people have to constantly go down there and trim off the flowers. With squash plants, you have a male flower and a female flower so that they can get the male parent and the female parent to then make seed. When you talk tomatoes or peppers, it's something completely different. If you can imagine trying to snip the little pistil pollen parts apart on a tomato plant, and that gets into a whole nother level we're not going to talk about, but it is part of the reason that F1 seed is going to cost more. And depending upon what you're looking at, you can imagine that some of it has to be grown outside of the United States simply due to the cost of going up and down rows, even if it's squash, and constantly being bent over and trimming the plants to be able to get the hybrid that you want. That just is backbreaking work, and we all know farm workers basically do backbreaking work. Okay, so next slide, 29.
Okay.
open pollinated. Now, I touched on this, but in the seed industry, for seed producers, and actually it should carry over to home gardeners who want to collect seed, open pollinated means controlled pollination. It doesn't mean everything's just simply left out to nature. And the reason that plant picture is there is that's one of my vegetable beds, and that's 2 bush zucchini on the end, 2 different bush zucchini in the middle, and a climbing squash at the very back end, and they would cross. I will not collect seed from any of those plants. The only time I collect seed from plants is if it's a pumpkin and I want to roast the pumpkin seeds to eat. Squash is, squash is by far the rabbit of the plant world as far as crossing with things. They cross readily, and I did once. Somebody gave me some seed, and you don't really know till August or September if you have some big watery thing. It's not pretty to look at on the centerpiece. It's not good for eating. You just wasted some of your garden space, your water, your fertilizer, your energy on something that didn't pan out. And I hit this a lot because a lot of us do seed trade, and it's amazing how many people out there haven't got a clue. And so if you do seed trade, somebody might tell you, oh, I have the seed, and I have seen people do it. And on some of the sites, we try to gently educate people. It's like, oh, I saved this seed from this farmer's market squash because it was so cool. And it's like, well, most of the farmers, even if you go to the farmers here, they're not going to have 400 feet between beds of squash so that the seed is good. They buy new seed every year. So that squash you buy at the farmer's market is not going to give you seed that's going to come true to what you bought. And it's the same thing here with the Rebecchias. I'm trying to plant the one variety only on one side of the fence, and maybe then I can continue to collect seed from that, but I'm still buying seed for the cappuccino Rebecchia because I really like that one, and I think that I have my yellow ones a little bit too close to the ones that are giving me colors. And for $3, what the heck? I'll just go get what I want. And the other note on this, and it is in our resources, and we can get those pages out too if you want, is Seed Savers Exchange. I mean, we do go to UC sites for most of everything. Seed Savers Exchange will tell you on each and every plant what you have to do to get good seed. There are people who will go out and hand pollinate their squash and then bag it so a bee or something can't come around and pollinate it. I don't go to that level. It's a lot of extra work, and so that isn't something I do. Slide 30, we're still on crossing, and this is where, Seed Savers says for squash you need 1,600 feet. Some other things say 800 feet to a half mile, but squash is the most easily crossed probably of the vegetable seeds. And when you get something, if you look at that third bullet down, you've got summer squash, pumpkins, gourds, and some others can all be within pepo, cucurbita pepo or squash pepo. And within that level, they will cross. And it isn't always going to taste or look very good. So you can imagine your zucchini in a miniature gourd, and it might be something that just is a bitter, ugly little thing. It's one thing for people to know that they want to experiment. There are people who deliberately try to cross their zinnia seeds to see what new kinds of things they can do, and some of the ones that are very easy to cross. But it's another if you think you're going to get what you expect if you plant from something that you weren't careful about before you collected the seeds. And it completely depends on the plant. I'm concentrating on squash because most of us do grow summer and winter squash in our gardens, and that is probably the one most people make the majority of mistakes with. They say peas are self-pollinating, and I'll talk a little bit about self-pollinating. People call tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, peas, self-pollinating. What that means is the flower has both the female part and the male part. So squash, you have a male flower and a female flower, and they're separate flowers. When people talk about self-pollinating, the flower is complete. It has both the pistil and the stamen, and the wind can pollinate it, or bees, whatever insect is out there, if it's a self-pollinating flower. Now, generally, most of us find that the wind isn't enough. You know, sometimes here it gets pretty still over the summer, so you really do need to encourage your pollinating insects and such if you want a good vegetable garden. But self-pollinating only means it has both parts. So now we go to 31. So what happens when you have these pollen-covered bees? You know, what happens if you plant one of this tomato and two of that tomato and one of that tomato? You're not going to get true seed if you go, well, it was a self-pollinating plant, so I can save this tomato and collect the seed from it. Yeah, you know, maybe if you put four together and you've got a different plant there or maybe some others, you can be pretty sure. But if you go for one of this and one of this and one of this, some of them might be true because some of them will get wind pollinated, but your pollinating insects are going to interfere with some others. So you might get what you thought you were going to get, and you might not. Now, with all those qualifications, I do tend to save seed from my own tomatoes if it's not an F1, but if I'm growing something for the Master Gardener's sales, I buy new seed because I don't want there to be a chance that people expect us to know what we're doing and be the experts, and what if we sell them isn't what we said it is supposed to be. So generally for anything that I'm taking into a sale, I go buy fresh seed for. Okay, and then the next slide, I'm really disappointed in a way. I've used the UC website before I became a Master Gardener because they used to have lots of good things, and they had this PDF that I haven't been able to find on the newer website. So I'm sorry that I can't find the PDF, but I do have the picture I'd saved to use in elsewhere. And this is two peppers, that itty bitty one on the upper left and the big one, and they crossed it, and these are the different peppers they got from different child plants from that one cross. Those two peppers, and they grew a bunch of different plants. And so that is something to keep in mind, that you will not always get only one thing from one cross. You know, if you were trying to do an F1 out of this, you'd have to keep going with the one you wanted and experimenting. And that's why you'll see that it takes 10 or 20 years for some of these hybridizers, because you have to grow on the plant and get the fruit, and that takes a whole season. So we're almost wrapped up, folks. Congratulations on getting this far. As I mentioned in the back, we have resources, and I wanted you to see how easy some of these are to navigate. So this would be the California Department of Food and Agriculture, CDFA, and you'll see the PDFs. You know, I talked about the trifold and the California seed law. So next to that red arrow, there are all these different things you can just click on, and the trifold and such, they made their site very easy to navigate and understand. So as Master Gardeners, I think everybody knows that we're not expected to be walking encyclopedias. We don't have to know everything about every bug or disease or plant or flower that was ever grown. We know how to look things up. And this is one of the sites, the Department of Food and Agriculture and their seed area, that you can find a lot of information on. And now we can go to slide 34. Okay, so in summary, at a high level, if you're just aware there are laws, there are things to check out. Mostly they exist to cover the industry. So they're not as concerned with the home gardener and people like us as far as all the laws about hybridizing and protecting plants, but they do, because it is on your nursery label. So they do care about us, and as master gardeners, we need to be careful not to propagate the plants that have protections on them. The other thing, invasive species are spread by man, and that is something that, you know, if we care about plants, let's really get out there and try and educate people not to bring plants and plant parts into California, that unless they're working with a certified nursery, which if they're mailing into California with a nursery tag on it, they're probably certified, otherwise it will get collected at the post office or at the border. And the seed you buy is from technically a labeler, and they probably didn't grow it. And this is really important when you get to that, the same seed. I should probably have put the cost up there when I had the tromboncino. The same seed can be $1.99 or $5.99 for a packet, depending on who you buy it from. And since you know the labeler is just putting their name on it, why not get the less expensive seed? Now, I still have favored seed companies. I will admit that. And part of it, you can go to somewhere like Garden Watchdog and look up seed companies or plant companies, and people review them there. And some do, even though they're a labeler, it's possible that their storage facility is damp. It's possible that their transportation system isn't as good as some others. So you might find that you navigate to certain ones that always germinate well and such. But generally speaking, most of the seed companies are going to give you the same quality because it's coming from the same growers. It's rare that you run into somebody who really kind of balled it up one year or something. And then F1 seed will not come true. Just, you know, yeah, you might get 1 out of 20 that came true to the plant, but you wouldn't know until you tasted it and ate it. And why bother? If it's an F1, and the name will always say F1 after it. If it's an F1 plant and you want it, get it. And open all pollinated plants come true from seed with controlled pollination. They can still cross with one another. And that's the picture of the cappuccino, which is also a Flora Select. And when you go there, it will tell you who the breeder is and other information about the plant. And then you'll see we have resources and lots of links. We can open this up to questions, and also, Debbie, we really went for a while. If people wanted, we could go to Reamer Seeds and look at country of origin, because that's a little interesting.
Okay. So I've got it. So if anybody wants to ask Maggie questions, that you can unmute yourself.
Okay. And Debbie, in the background, why don't you open a website?
Okay.
And go to Reamer, R-E-I-M-E-R, R-E-I-M-E-R, seeds.com.
Let me kind of, okay, say that again, Maggie.
Okay, since you're using the search field, if you use the search field, put Reamer, R-E-I-M-E-R, space, seeds. Okay. Oh, you're in the URL field. Okay. If you're in the URL field, put reamerseeds.com.
Okay. Here, I want to go. Oops.
And now these are one of the people that they didn't get great reviews for whatever reason. And if you go to them, they actually let you click on country of origin. So I'm looking for, where is it? Yep, click on that. And you can click on a map.
You want me to click on
actually, I think you have to scan down. Yeah. It lets you click on a map so you can find out that Belize has hot pepper seeds, is where what Belize grows. And yep, go ahead, click on Brazil or South America. Then it will show you the different, go ahead and scroll, different countries. And you can go back up. We can go to Colombia, because everybody's heard about things they grow in Colombia.
This
Oh,
is
that was
gonna
in
be,
South America. It was one of the
Okay.
flags.
okay,
If you
Google
look
one
at
of the, well, let me go back
There was a-
here. Let's see.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I
when you
got you.
scroll
One of the
down,
flags.
and if you click on the flag for Colombia,
All right, let me find it. Let me know if you see
see,
it.
it was up
Whoops.
above that. So
Oh, there it
see,
is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And scroll down so people can see the screen. And then you'll see they grow peppers and tomatoes in Colombia. That's Reamer Seeds gets peppers and tomatoes from Colombia. This is the only seed company I'm aware of that shares where their seed comes from.
Oh, that's so interesting. That really
And
is.
you can go through the whole map and you can see what countries are farming what kinds of seed. They don't list the specific varieties, but if you are curious,
Okay.
and that is the only one that I found that admitted that, you know, this is where the seed company from, and we just label it.
Right. Let's see what Argentina has. Peppers and tomatoes.
Okay, so that seems to be South America.
That's South America.
Yep.
Okay.
So there we are, folks. Is everybody unmuted?
Well, they have to unmute themselves so they can. I'm just kind of curious what the United States is doing. Oh, there's a lot. A lot here in the United States.
Yeah, a lot of our vegetables.
Okay. I don't want to hog up all of Maggie's time. Does anybody have a question for Maggie? Okay. Well, Maggie.
Silent.
Well, you know what, Maggie, if somebody does want to ask you a question, or if it's a technical question, you know, later on, maybe 3 o'clock in the morning, something like that. You know, I think you're listed on both Calaveras and Tuolumne on the VMS. So I think
I am.
So
yes.
in Tuolumne, you're if they're looking, it may not say Master Gardener. It might list you as administration, and that was just so that we could add you to the roster. So you can email Maggie, and she's great about you know, responding to emails and answering all those questions. I'm thinking right at this point, I'm going to stop recording. And